So before we start, I got one kind of very important question. Who here, and be honest with me, does not have either a smartphone, tablet, or laptop these days? They still exist, great. So let's try this again, but let me rephrase the question a little bit. Who here does have either a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop these days? Wow. Thank you. Just to check that we all live in the year 2016 here, where we use those smart devices to call and connect to anyone we like, anytime we like. We use it to find directions and important information, to listen to music and watch movies, to learn, teach, buy, sell, and work whenever we want and wherever we are. It's not that long ago since we actually had to go to the library to find relevant information, or send a physical postcard to notify someone, or actually wait an hour till we got home so we could call our mother. Our networked smart devices have enabled more option, choice, and personal freedom than we've ever experienced before. But we take it for granted, right? Psychologists have an interesting word for this. They call it hedonic adaptation. However great the change or increased freedom, pretty quickly you return to a base level of human happiness. You simply get used to it. And it's interesting to realize that each generation has its own, what I call, technologies of freedom. Technologies, objects, artifacts that both enabled an entirely new realm of option, choice, personal freedom, but also became culturally branded as representations of this freedom in movies, books, stories. These technologies changed how we live our lives, how we get through the day, but pretty quickly became the status quo. For example, the car and motorcycle were such technologies of freedom. They allowed us to be less constrained by the sometimes unfortunate accidents of geography. With these inventions, we could have work, friends, and lovers outside of our town and even country. And we see this represented in media. For example, we've all seen a movie where we saw a guy wearing a leather jacket drive his motorcycle through the desert. It became an icon of being completely free and independent. Funny enough, it actually also became an icon for men in their midlife crisis trying to find themselves again. And the car was a similar symbol. For those that still watch television, the next time you switch on your TV, pay close attention to the car commercials. You always see cars driving through beautiful landscapes, green hills, icy mountains, sunny coasts. The car, if you will, personifies a sense of personal freedom. The ad tries to tell you, dear consumer friend, if you buy me, you will experience a sense of freedom that others can only dream of. It used to be that when kids turned 16 or 18, they would go out, get their driver license, buy a car. It was their declaration of independence. Today, this is not as compelling to our 16 and 18-year-olds. They wait till they get their driver license and maybe not even want a car at all. Because with all the new options available, the sharing of rides, the sharing of cars, and often more networked and better public transportation system in most Western countries. The idea that car equals freedom is less dominant today. Today, our smart devices are our technologies of freedom, where the car and the motorcycle stood for freedom of physical space. Our network devices connected to the internet stand for freedom of access. Friends, work, lovers, information, just one swipe away. And you can see this with a lot of youngsters today. They often find it way more constraining to hand over their smartphones for a weekend than to face house arrest for that same weekend. Because those little plastic smart devices stand for an access to their friends, their community, to knowing what's going on. So how does this increase in access actually works? When a process becomes digitized, pretty quickly becomes scalable. It takes away the need for intermediation. To put it in very tweetable words, digitization breeds decentralization. Take the travel agency, for example. You used to go to a travel agency if you wanted to go somewhere, and they would arrange the flight and the place where you would stay. When this process became digitized, suddenly you didn't have to go to the travel agency, and you had an entirely new realm of choice. Now you could compare all flights that were going there and choose the cheapest one. You could be notified when a new bus service launched and they discounted their tickets. Or share a ride with a person you've never met to your location. Similarly, of course, with that place of destination. Now you could compare all hotels, hostels, crash on couches of individuals you've never met, even stay in tree houses and submarines that are now turned into bed and breakfast hotspots. The internet allows us to do more and more with less and less, until we can do pretty much anything with almost nothing. So in this line, what might be a technology of freedom in 15, 20 years that eventually, step by step, we will take just as for granted as we take our smart devices today? I believe the main technology that will enable this will be virtual reality. Now, some of you have heard of it. Some of you have even tried on some silly goggles, and if not, you probably will in the upcoming years. But virtual reality is not just about some fancy eyewear. I see virtual reality as the ambition to simulate all our senses, our sight, our sound, our touch, taste, and smell. And scientists and engineers are working really hard to create the interfaces and technologies that enable this. So they say maybe one day we can switch between our real world and a virtual one, just like that. And I know this might sound like some futuristic mumbo-jumbo nonsense stuff to some of you, but imagine what this might mean. What if you could experience what someone else would experience? If you could see what they see? What if you could step into the shoes of a refugee fleeing from a civil war? How would this change your sense of empathy? How would this change your sense of self if you could tap into other people's worlds and experiences multiple times an hour? Think about how this might change how we relate to sexual experiences. This suddenly gets interesting, of course. What if you could do it with anyone around the world? Which famous person would you choose? Or you could do it with your partner, but you choose how you see them, and they choose an avatar for you. Think about how this might change how we learn social skills, technical skills. If you could practice your public speaking in front of an audience just as realistically looking as you are. Or practice your dance moves with the world's best ballet dancer just there in front of you. The possibility to simulate experiences might enable extraordinary new ways to learn, connect. But more option and choice isn't always the right thing. When you could choose from an infinite amount of experiences, but you only have 24 hours in a day, what would you choose to experience? There comes an interesting paradox in play. The famous psychologist Barry Schwartz coined it the paradox of choice. We all love choice. But when there's too much to choose from, it feels harder to make the right decision. Because with every decision we choose, we make, we feel the other options feel like missed chances, missed possibilities, missed experiences. I think we should be very aware of this paradox and take our human vulnerabilities and incapabilities into account as design guidelines when we create those technologies. So when we are moving to a world where real might be the most relative word that we'll ever have, we develop them in a guiding way, an empowering way, a human-centered way, where the car and the motorcycle stood for freedom of physical space. Our smart network devices stand for freedom of access. We should culturally brand virtual reality in our books, movies, commercials, stories, not as the ultimate engine of escape, but as a catalyst for social, educational, creative change. We should realize that more option, more choice, isn't an end in itself, but still a means for creating human connection, human fulfillment, and human flourishment. Thank you very much.